So, hmm, I took voice lessons some time ago. Actually, it was when it was actually before I got sober. But anyway, and it was at Santa Monica Music. And one of the exercises we did was once to try to make your voice not break between the head tone and the chest tone or the falsetto and the normal voice. And it involved going like this. Ah, you can hear my break now, so I can't do it, but, it's a nice, like, meditation, uh, warm up, if you wanna try it. So start with your highest note and then slide down and basically you're saying, "Ah," that's really the thing, like or "Ha." Yeah, "Ha." Ha. Hmm. And that I think, kind of captures that feeling of settling that we're looking to cultivate in the beginning of our sitting. And then coming into stillness, you can close your eyes or just lower your gaze. And just a sense of the whole body settling. If we can find that just through setting an intention, or sometimes called inclining the mind, that we can already start to become more relaxed and more present. Releasing the shoulders, relaxing the jaw, softening the belly. And just feeling your body, just feeling the presence of being in a body, the solidity of the body, the density, the weight. And you might also feel the energy within the body, the pulse of the heart and the bloodstream, the nervous system that's constantly sending signals through the body. Can be felt as kind of streams of energy as we tune into the more subtle sensations. And then the movement of breath. And the breath has this impact on much of the body, moves the whole torso and chest and belly, the shoulders. As a meditation object, we like to focus on a particular point of sensation in the breath. So either focusing on the sensations at the nostrils, the air touching in and out, or if that's not easy to tune into, to feel simply the movement of the belly rising and falling. The breath becomes a meditation object. And to sustain this attention, we have to stay with the whole movement of breath, the whole process of breathing in and breathing out, breath after breath. A breath is not just a single sensation, it's a series of sensations, very subtle, some ways delicate and beautiful, life sustaining. Our minds are used to looking for stimulation, for pleasant experiences. We seek one after another. So trying to let the attention just sit with something that's relatively neutral, undramatic, can be difficult at first, particularly. The mind might look for more, seek for other stimulation or entertainment. And so we have to gently come back over and over to the breath in order to train the mind to rest in this calm. How we respond to the wandering mind, to the thoughts that appear, is really the key to our practice in many ways. It's what largely determines whether we are able to gain some peace or whether we turn our practice into self judgment or frustration, striving. Oh, that moment of realizing you're thinking is key. See if you can let that be a very simple moment, just a knowing and a letting go and a returning. No judgment or commentary piling on. So I presume that you can hear that bell fine when it's over there. Yes, thank you. Well, it occurred to me that this being July 13th, this is the 16th, 16 months exactly today since I started this project on March 13th, 2020. And so onward we go. Um, as I mentioned, we are at step 10. And we talked about this last week. Last Tuesday was the day before I started getting sick. And so much of my brain has rebooted since then. Excuse me. The after effects are with me. I don't recover well from colds. I have a poor history of lung conditioned, but there you are. So, as I talked about last week, step 10 is interesting because it encapsulates the entire process of steps 4 through 9. Step 4 being the searching and fearless moral inventory, and then in that process of reading the inventory and then hoping, asking, whatever, to have the character, the things that show up in the inventory removed, the negative qualities. And then of course, the steps 8 and 9, which are about making amends. And so step 10 says we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Um, you know, a pretty smart thing they put in these steps, I would say, very wise. Uh, because if it had simply been this process of inventory and making amends, and people thought, okay, I don't really have to worry about that anymore, probably be a lot more relapse, actually, because I think this is where we really uh, have these are the tools to avoid relapse, and this is one of the most important ones. Uh, Assuming that relapse can get triggered by kind of accumulation of guilt and resentments and uh, any kind of like unskillful behaviors. Um, so, as I've been doing over these months and this time, I usually just take one little section of the book to try to talk about each day, which is how we've managed to stretch out this one book for 16 months. So the opening of step 10 is on page 207 if you have the book in front of you, and it's just a short couple of paragraphs. Um, Kind of introducing the step. And talking about, first of all, the idea that there are these kind of formal ways uh, to do this practice, the step 10 practice. And, very fruitful, I would say. I know a lot of people like either write or sort of reflect on an inventory each night before they go to bed. And then there are, probably more commonly earlier in recovery, people kind of calling sponsor, although certainly doesn't just mean early recovery, but, kind of checking in whenever you feel like there's something kind of off. And and I will say that, one of the things that probably makes me, you know, a Buddhist in recovery is that a lot of my uh, step 10 work is done in meditation. That is the personal inventory part of it, not the making amends of it. But it's when I tend to reflect on my life, and you know, well, the reason I'm stopping is because I realize that the way we teach meditation suggests that all thoughts are meant to be let go of, and that if you find yourself thinking, just let go of it and come back to your breath. That's the sort of simple instruction that we give. That's really, I don't know if that's the way anybody really meditates. I I've been curious to talk to particularly really experienced meditators about what really happens when they meditate. Um, I feel like in a way there's something sort of dishonest about the way we talk about it. Um, that y- you know we talk about. uh, I guess maybe saying we isn't the right word. Maybe I should say I, but that somehow kind of put out meditation as if the mind is really like organized and structured, and there are just these little things that happen, and then then there's something else that happens, and it's all like very orderly, and and it all sort of makes sense in some way. And to me, the mind is much more chaos and randomness and just this flow, uh, and with oftentimes seemingly multiple things going on at once. There's the traditional understanding from the, and I think this comes from the Vasuddhimagga, one of the early commentaries, is that you can actually only think one thing at once. Um, but certainly it doesn't, it seems that those thoughts happen so rapidly that saying that there's only one thing happening at once doesn't really Ma it's not very meaningful if things are happening so fast. It's like, film. It's like, "Oh, yeah, there's only one frame going by at a time." So, yeah, but, of course, what we see is this flow. So, kind of what I'm getting back to or trying to talk about is that for me, and, like, again, I kind of feel guilty, like, saying this like I'm gonna undermine your practice, but a lot of my meditation is not an attempt to stop thinking. Um, a lot of it is reflective, and there's essentially a ping pong between coming into my body and settling and trying to be at ease with what I am feeling. And when I say feeling, generally that's talking about an emotional state. Just sort of hold that. So there's this somatic element of it, and then kind of a ping pong between that and then reflective, and sometimes not reflective, but discursive. So I would distinguish the two by saying that the reflective is more intentional. So reflective thought is, oh, I really want to reflect on this issue or this question. And the discursive is blah, 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 blah. My mind is just going and there's no control or effort or intention behind it. And so coming back to step 10, both discursive and reflective thought tend to uh, bring up, and particularly discursive thought actually tends to bring up the things that are troubling me. And I'm guessing that I'm not unusual in this, right? And again, kind of why I think these things are. these things don't seem to be talked about that much, but those who know me know that I tend to go for the things that are not talked about too much. Um, so the value of it for somebody in recovery who understands step 10 is that you find yourself in this discursive thought, which is like, yeah, blah, and you're just like thinking about something, and then you realize, oh, this is that resentment, or this is, oh, I'm thinking about this because I feel bad about what I said to that person yesterday. Oh, I need to make amends, right? So that's what I think is beautiful about the having step 10 as a model for holding our experience, that it's not just that we, oh God, this thing comes up, but that we have a container for it, that we have a tool for working with it, and that we can kind of go, oh yeah, right, that's, and and sometimes it's not an amends, it's self-examination, you know? It's that self-examination that we're like, I really need to look at that. I really need to work on that. And and I suspect people who imagine people who don't work the 12 steps do this also in meditation. But I do think that having that as a specific guideline in our life, a tool that we have incorporated into our way of operating in our lives is really valuable. And so, yeah, this is one of the, I would say, kind of classic ways that I think of Buddhism and the 12 steps as going together so well, you know? And and it's certainly a way in which it's not a way in which either the 12-step world kind of looks at so much, although I guess maybe there is some comment about that in the literature. But certainly the Buddhist world, I don't think, uh, gives us much of a hint about this. And so maybe this is one of those ideas that the 12-step world can contribute to the Buddhist world. And I think there are a lot of things that the 12-step world can contribute to the Buddhist world that unfortunately the Buddhist world doesn't seem very interested in hearing. Okay, as if I've just set up a straw man. It's called the Buddhist world. And I've made myself a victim because it doesn't listen to me. That was very brilliant, I must say. Anyway, um, so that I think, I hope that's helpful, because I th the reason I talk about that is because I'm concerned that people do feel that they're meditating wrong when they get into this discursive thing and then like sort of, whoa, what am I doing? And then, that you think, oh, that's not what I'm supposed to do. You know, so I'm doing it wrong. The basic meditation instruction to let go of the thought and come back to the breath is simply an instruction for concentration. It's not really a, a mindfulness practice. Mindfulness implies much more than just letting go of thoughts and coming back to the breath. But that's how it's so often depicted and taught. Um, um, the one, so that's all does not come out of this book. so that lets me go back to the book because there is something in here that I really like, uh, which is the second paragraph of this introduction to step 10. The main point is to not let a new set of mistakes build up so that we find ourselves back where we started at step 4 with a whole list of people we have harmed and actions we must correct. Or worse, that we don't wind up back at step 4, but instead back with a drink, a drug, or whatever destructive substance or activity got us here. Yeah, I like that, that turn of phrase, or the way I kind of played that, uh, and I remember writing that, which was like, 2003, because I wrote the first sentence and then realized, "Oh, wait, there's something worse than this." So it wasn't even like I had planned to write that. It was like I wrote the first sentence that, "Oh, we do this so that we don't have to write another step 4." And then I realized, "Oh, wait, like, wow, it can be worse than that, that you don't wind up back at step 4." Um, and that clearly, it goes back to why I said this is like the so important for relapse prevention, step 10. I think it's really at the heart of it. Uh, we can talk about the spiritual elements, and certainly when we get to step 11 in like November or whenever we get there, we can talk about meditation as just a relapse prevention, but I think that step 10 and its broadest meaning of really avoiding harm, avoiding uh, accumulating more uh, things we need to make amends for, um, is probably more important, more critical than meditation itself. A- and what was I going to say? Well, it'll come back. Um, so with step 10, I try to catch things as they come up so that I'm just making amends for one thing at a time. Step 10 implies a moment to moment attention to our behavior, right? This is what I wanted to get to. Keeping the precepts and watching the places our mind is taking us and being careful that we aren't headed for trouble. So, this then again brings it back to mindfulness, right? That step 10 is, in order to do step 10, we have to be present. And that whereas a step 4 might be, a reflection on things far in the past, step 10 is going to be a reflection on things that happened very recently and can also be a reflection on something that we are in the midst of doing. We were looking at this in the Sutta study class a couple weeks ago about how the Buddha talks about being aware right before you do something, as you're doing something, and right after you do it, and sort of noticing whether that's skillful or unskillful. And um, so that's very much the attunement that we need to work step 10 skillfully, to be present. It doesn't do much good if it's we just pick it up like a month later. Um, but I'll also, I'm glad that I mentioned the precepts here because the what we're also trying to do is avoid having to make amends and you know live by principles and the five precepts to not kill, not to steal, not to harm sexually, not to lie, and not to use intoxicants, give us these guidelines for living so that we don't do unskillful things. Um, yeah, yeah, I know there's a lot more in this chapter, so I'm not going to go further into this sort of concept, particularly the next section on admitting we're wrong. I think is such a critical piece for all of us. Certainly is really important for me. I just recently got to go through. I almost said had to go through. Got to go through. Had an opportunity to make broad-ranging amends to someone, and that training we have in this program uh, to do that uh, serves us well. Serves me well. So I will open it up for any comments or questions.
Hey, Kevin.
Mike?
Hey, morning, everyone. You know, so you were talking about kind of what goes on in your head while you're meditating, and that that was that was good insight for me because I I kind of feel like that too. I have like a well, I'm trying to stop, right? The my teachers have told me there's two types of meditation, right? The stopping and the seeing, and I'm just trying to do the stopping, and but I have the episodes of kind of stream of consciousness like you're talking about,
Mhm.
the just the dialogue going on. But then I also have
Discursive. Yes.
yeah, discursive, I guess you called it. And
Yeah.
but I also have the reflective too. It seems like every time I sit, there's always one or two things that come up that are like, oh, I should do this after this, or oh, I should
Mhm.
do that after this, or
Mhm.
things that I've just things that I've just gone through earlier in the day or something like that.
Yeah.
And they just come up,
Hmm.
and it's kind of like, they're not bad things. They just
Right.
kind of come up, and I kind of, think about them a little bit and then move on. But I kind of wonder about like what you're saying about that's a natural thing, and I've heard from um, other kind of meditation teachers that people who meditate that don't work the 12 steps, that's just kind of maybe even non-addicts, that's everything just kind of comes up. It kind of like almost works like the steps in a way where just your all your stuff comes up,
Hmm.
over the years of meditating, and it's kind of maybe a different way or a similar, not similar, but another way of kind of dealing with all your issues
Yeah.
that we deal with through the steps or try to.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. First of all, just to say that there are different, if you're on a meditation retreat, that this your meditation practice and your goals and your kind of uh, intention might be quite different from what it is if you're just doing your morning sitting on a daily basis, because it's possible to get to depths of concentration and insight in that setting that it's just not possible to get to in a daily practice. And so it's also important to just sort of distinguish between those and not expect yourself to have the kind of meditative experience at home that you have when you're on like a 10-day retreat or a 2-month retreat, and just, uh, um, because that's where we can get into this kind of um, self-judgment. Um, there's a lot that can be said. I mean, the word meditation itself, if you look it up in the dictionary, in an English language dictionary, it's considered to be a deep thinking. It's thought. It's very serious, reflective thought. It's not quite. It's not an attempt to quiet the mind. So it's the English term isn't the same as what we mean in Buddhism. So there's that. Um, but you know, p- first of all, part of we see in the big book when it introduces step 11, it talks about it as an opportunity to kind of cultivate this intuitive wisdom, right? Will come to depend on the intuition that comes through it. So there's that implication that it's not just a passive thing, that we are sitting and touching something deeper within ourselves and creating the kind of field out of which things can blossom, you know, and through training the mind. No, your last comment uh, um, reminded me that, you know, I was on a longer retreat some years ago, uh, but not a long time ago, uh, when the teachers started to incorporate the idea of what they call a life review into, like, when people are on like a 2-month retreat, like a long, pretty long retreat, that they found that people would start to do this kind of life review, which, for 12-step people, we might call it a searching fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And that over the years of teaching retreats, these teachers had kind of decided that maybe we should stop telling people not to do that, which is what they had done, you know, or when they were working with this Asian model of just let everything go, just stop thinking. Um, and that it seems to correspond with uh, people starting to work with Stephen Levine's book, A Year to Live, which I suspect some of you are aware of. So Stephen's book um, suggested that people should try spending a year and uh, uh, as if it was the last year of their lives, and ask themselves, how would I live this year if this was the last year of my life? And actually, people actually started groups, and there are still probably groups today that do this with the guidance of a teacher, and they kind of meet each month or periodically and talk about what they're uh, doing and how they're working with it. But a central element of that course, if you will, or this uh, idea was that people would do a life review because apparently, Stephen Levine worked a great deal with death and dying, with people who were in the process of dying. And he found that when people were approaching death, they very often spontaneously did this life review. So, okay, so we see that, like, that was, like, something that started to infiltrate the Buddhist culture through this presumably through this book and through this sort of recognition from the teachers that this was had some value. And so, yeah, it's another point where we can kinda go, "Yeah, we had that one," in the 12-step world, and but particularly the thing to appreciate about it, of course, the point of doing the A Year to Live, of course, is that you don't wait until you're dying, right? That you start to review your life a little earlier, so you have some time to maybe make it work better. And guess what? That's what we're trying to do with our program, with our 12-step program, is like figure out like how we got off the rails and how we can come back and how we can make our life better. So it's really all of this inventory work and reflective work uh, is in the service of that, in the service of making our lives more fulfilling, more productive, more something that we can take more, um, more joy from, more sense of pride about how we've lived our lives, that we haven't wasted our time, that we don't have a pile of regrets, and uh, that we aren't able to do anything about. Uh,
Kind of responding to that. So
yeah,
at the Dharma Bums, they used to do once a month we do like a half morning silent retreat, and it would just be like meditation after meditation after meditation, like 5 in a row. I think we're gonna get back to those, but it just was a totally different experience than just trying to do it like 20 minutes a day,
yeah.
which is what I normally do. Like you're saying, it was a whole different kind of level of dealing with your mind when I did
Yeah.
those.
Yeah, it's interesting. Um, and so it sounds like you have not been on like a silent retreat, like a 10-day or 5-day or anything like that. Yeah. All right, we're gonna have to get you signed up then, Mike, because you're ready. Um, yeah, there's a whole process. It's quite shocking, frankly, when you've been meditating for a while and you think you know what meditation is like from just doing daily meditation, and then you go on a retreat and it all changes. And and the first couple days, it feels like you've completely lost control and that you don't know how to meditate anymore. And you're like, you don't know why you came to the retreat and what the point of this is and what's wrong with you. And why don't they, teach you to solve this problem? And it's those first couple days can be very challenging. I mean, I guess it depends on your personality. I have a pretty warped personality, so I've had some tough ones. Um, but then you have this kind of breakthrough. At least I believe that everyone, maybe not, maybe there are people who don't, but I think that at a certain point, people have a breakthrough where uh, it changes to something else that you've never experienced before, which is like, oh, quiet, oh, peace, oh, real mindfulness. Oh, like listen to that bird. Oh my God. Look at that tree. Uh, and turns into this beautiful, beautiful experience that then then really changes your understanding of meditation. Uh, Takes it far, far beyond just the sort of discursive, uh, you know, uh, kind of realm into something completely different. That's one way to sell meditation retreats. Not that I have to sell them.
Um, this is Glenda. I went on my first month-long silent meditation retreat in the beginning of 2020 before
Oh,
everything
really?
shut down.
Wow.
And since we're talking about this, I just wanted to say and ask, like, one of the things that has really struck me since coming back from that retreat is that on that retreat, I noticed for my own personal practice that the first hour-long sit was basically like a super loud mind. Like maybe there would be some concentration, but every day after sleeping, waking up, sitting down, my mind was just like scattered and unfocused and loud. And it would take some time, like maybe it would happen at the end of that sit, or maybe it would take at some point during the day, I would settle and then I could experience something, my own version of what you're describing in terms of concentration.
Right.
But what has struck me since coming back, and particularly it's been a crazy time, but I try to meditate between 30 minutes and an hour a day, and that seemed like a long time before. But as I just said, I realized on the retreat that quote unquote first hour, which is of course like at best what I do at all, not on retreat, what felt like, I'm just gonna like be present with my crazy mind until I can kind of find a sense of peace. And it's been, I don't know, a struggle. I've been trying to figure out how to enjoy the loudness of my mind, the mess of my mind, when there is no like, oh, eventually it will become peace, because
Yeah.
there is no retreat in daily life. So I wonder if you have anything to say about that. It's yeah.
Really good question, Linda. And yeah, one thing I'll just add, since you sort of brought that up in a way, is that that breakthrough I described of like you get to a point where you kind of get some quiet in your meditation is not something that just stays with you 24 hours a day. Once you've had that breakthrough, what typically happens is that each day on a long retreat like that, you have a couple of sittings that are very settled. And then the rest of them are kind of like, can be a variety of things. It can be challenging. And so, what you're, I could say what you're suffering from, if I may, is attachment to the pleasant meditation experience. And very understandable. And particularly to come out of a month long and then go into lockdown, it's kind of not very nice. But it's really about letting go. I mean, I can't give any more sort of fancy instruction than that. It's really like realizing that those mind states are conditioned. They are they come about through certain causes and conditions, and they are impermanent because they are conditioned. If they were not conditioned, if they were unconditioned, they would be nibbana, and then there'd be no problem. Um, but they are impermanent, conditioned mind states. And but I will say that you don't know, watch, just notice how you feel at the end of your sits. This is how I kind of um, motivate myself to sit through the challenging daily practices, is noticing that those last 5 minutes, or maybe just when it's over, I'm like, oh yeah, it's better. So I'm not comparing my mind to my retreat mind. I'm comparing my mind to how it was when I began the sit, and just kind of going, okay, that's good. It's helpful. Um, and appreciating that, you know. Um, it's about the best I can do for you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Um, all right, you guys. Thanks for showing up today. And yeah, actually, this was sort of interesting for me this morning. I feel like we got into some very practical stuff about meditation. Certainly one of my goals as a meditation teacher has always been to make it easier for people to meditate. And I, you know, the main way I believe in doing that is by helping people to let go of expectations of what it should be. And so I feel like that's something we kind of got to a little bit this morning. Um, I will note, as I've been doing lately, try to, that you can offer me dana uh, through Venmo or PayPal. And Angela put that information up in the chat, and it's on my website as well.